Hey guys, Brent Hull at Winterthur, talking today about the low style Georgian. What does that mean? So we've studied the high style Georgian, the really rich things that would have been done during the Georgian period, let's say 1740 to the American Revolution, 1780, right? So we have a whole period of architectural details. Some of them were built in Philadelphia for very wealthy patrons. That's what we're calling the high style. They would have been things that were copied out of pattern books, Palladio's pattern books and Abraham Swan. They would have used those pattern books to help design. There was also things being built during this period that weren't necessarily canonical or didn't come from the books, but were still built during the Georgian period. Those are the things we're going to look at. And these are the, taverns and the simple houses and the simpler details, but still things that are very important, because as you guys have clients that want Georgian, okay, it doesn't always mean the high style. They want Georgian era details, and we're going to talk about those things, how they come together, how they make it look beautiful in your house. Remember, the point of this series is inspiration. The point of this series is to help you see the opportunity that when your client says colonial or Georgian or federal, what they mean and how to dial down to give them something beautiful, because the examples inside are gorgeous. So come on, let's go check it out. Okay guys, so we're in the Marlboro Room, which is Maryland, below Baltimore, lower Marlboro area. 1744, so it's an early house in America, but full paneled walls. The room wasn't originally quite this big. It was this other paneling was added onto it. But you see those early American details. Notice that there is no mantle shelf, right? Just a big collection molding that runs around the mantle. We've got full paneled walls. We got a very, classical cornice. The chair rail, you guys might give me a hard time about this. I'm always saying chair rail's never 36. This one's about 38 or 40, right? It speaks about a period of time where we weren't really following the Palladian books necessarily. It wasn't canonical as far as the classicism goes, but you still have great proportions in here. These lower panels, the tall upper panels, right? There's also no casing around the doors, just kind of beaded openings. So it's an early house, and this is the great thing about Winterthur is you see so many different things. There's so much inspiration here, being able to not only walk from room to room to room, but see so many different periods, this cross-section of America, or multiple cross-sections of America, seeing all these different high style, we'll see simple things, all here in this same place. It's amazing. Okay guys, 1760s, right? You wouldn't think that this is 1760s, but realize what's happening all over America. In a major city like Philadelphia, you had very sophisticated clients and fine craftsmanship, and you had people who were looking at Palladian pattern books. And out in the country, this is New York, the Hardenberg parlor, you have a different crowd, right? And so this is something that looks very early colonial, right? Colonial revival, sometimes you'll see this kind of thing repeated. Realize that when your client says Georgian, it doesn't necessarily mean Port Royal, very high style. This is Georgian period, right? But not necessarily what you might think is typically Georgian. Huge fireplace, right? This would have been a cooking fireplace. They would have lived around this thing. So anyway, guys, we're going to see a breadth of things here at Winterthur, where you are seeing very rural country things, taverns, settlers' houses, right? There's a Dutch influence, there's a German influence, right? We are a melting pot, and you see these influences come through from different cultures that come to America. There's a great variety of things that we can do and offer our clients. So this is Hardenberg. It's a wonderful early settlers house. All fun things, all exciting, cool things to learn from. We're going to check out a few more 1760s houses that don't appear anything like Port Royal, and that's the fun of it. Okay guys, again, 1760, now we're in Connecticut. Interesting how things are changing. This is a little more English. We see the beam, instead of that heavy natural wood beam, we have a paneled beam. The beam here is another beam. It too is boxed out with trim. So different ways of treating all of these things. Again, a way for you to help understand and see this Georgian period, this Georgian era, right? This Georgian time frame and the different things that were going on. It wasn't all that high style Philadelphia. Philadelphia things. We've gone out to the country. It's simple, yet you're seeing some difference between the Dutch, the German, the English, right? All different ways of doing it. It expands, hopefully, your opportunity and the things you get to share with clients and how you get to use moldings when you're designing in a house and when you're working with spaces that are smaller like this, that the scale of all those things shrink down so that it's still beautiful. And this room certainly is beautiful. Okay guys, 1726, Newport, Rhode Island. This is called the Gidley Room. We've reproduced this room a couple times. It's really fascinating. It's really unique, okay? One, we have these arched panels, right? They're a raised panel that's arched. Now, it's not an inset panel. It's not a panel set in a stile and rail. It is lifted off and is kind of held off with this panel mold, okay? You see this, and we'll see this a little bit, that kind of there's three types of paneling here. There's kind of the inset panel in a stile and rail that's a flat panel in the Federal period. And then in the Georgian period, you will have a stile and rail with a raised panel. And then this type where we have a stile and rail frame, but the panel's actually lifted off the face of the frame, kind of a unique detail. It's pretty interesting, and as you go around the room, you'll see different types of panels and different types of elements shown. In the corner, because this room's really dark or it's brown, there's actually a really neat fluted column detail with a pedestal and a capital, and then of course you've got these pendants coming down off this interesting crown. I think the point of this room is the variety and opportunity to do so many different things. The fireplace just has a Belection molding around the fireplace. There's no mantel shelf. Too early for this period of time. One of the great things about Gidley is that when you walk into the room, this back side is actually open, and we can actually see the construction methods of how these panels were put together. Essentially, there's a main rail that comes through and one at the top that's actually cut out, okay? And then you'll see the panels kind of inset and notched in together to that stile and rail frame. You'll see that the wood came from a sawmill, a straight sawmill. You see these marks going down the very even pattern. If it had been pit sawn, you would have seen these saw marks changing. So we're dating the wood. You're going to see mortise and tenon joinery. You're going to see the peg that comes through that's tying the mortise and tenon together. So kind of an interesting deal, and it's all rough on the back side. Remember, this is a pre-industrial area, so they would have planed smooth the face side, but they wouldn't have taken the time to plane and smooth the back side, so it's all rough on the back side. Interesting details. You're getting a glimpse into how these things were made and what was done. 1726 in America, Newport, Rhode Island. Kind of an interesting room. Again, showing the breadth and variety of things that we can look at and do and introduce into our rooms because there's just so much going on. Okay, so 1734, this is from Maryland. It's a room that was Mr. DuPont's bedroom, called the Cecil bedroom. I love the colors in here. There's so many great things going on here and so many things we can use for inspiration. Now remember, Gidley was an early room too. And so both of these have this same pattern where the stile and rail, the panels are actually sitting on top of the stile and rail, and there's a panel mold holding it off. As opposed to what's typical Georgian stile and rail, where you'd see, you know, like in that door, where the panel is set inside the frame of the door. So two different types of panel configuration there. 1734, it's, you know, we don't have a mantel shelf, right? There's just a big Belection molding going around. That's pretty typical. We're going to look at another room, Bowers, that is a Georgian room with no mantel shelf that actually has a Federal mantel set in there later when there was an addition made to the house. See this piece of hardware? Now that's an open face rim lock. We have closed face, the brass rim locks, which we've talked about before, but in an earlier fashion, right, you would have what was called a metal or an open face rim lock. A lot of great things going on in here, the colors. Oh, and look at the classicization, right? The columns that are in this room, right? We've got fluted columns that go up to a capital. This capital is not canonical. It's not something that you would see in a Palladian pattern book. So, you know, this is something that maybe the craftsman or carpenter saw, was inspired by, and it came out a little bit charming, right? But it's not pure classicism. I've talked too about reading moldings, that sometimes with new moldings on new houses, you look up and you can't really read what's going on, and historic moldings are moldings you can read because there's a break and there's a gap. This cornice is something that's very easy to read. You can look up there and kind of see what's happening at that ceiling. That keystone over that door helps us read that break. Historic moldings are often big and bold and strong, and these moldings certainly are that. So a lot of fun things to look at. This is a great example of an early, colonial room. I wouldn't call it necessarily Georgian, right? When you think of Port Royal being this very high-style Georgian room, Georgian, in my mind, really starts at 1740. This is 1739. So we're seeing a mix of different things here, which makes this, in my mind, even more exciting and more fun to look at. Okay guys, what'd you think? Amazing stuff, right? Those architectural details in there are the cream of the crop. They're the finest things from the past, right? That we can learn from today. If you're a builder wanting to build better, if you're a homeowner wanting to build something beautiful, an architect, a craftsman, in here you're gonna find great details, whether it's Georgian, Federal, or Greek Revival. So thanks for joining us. I'm Brent Hull, and thanks for watching.